I refused to cancel my HVAC training program just to drive my brother to his GF's house. Dad slammed me against the wall and snapped, "His future matters. Yours never did." So I walked out and karma did the rest. Before the karma, there was just the heat of a Texas morning. I stood in the kitchen, ironing a shirt for the interview that would finally get me out. I paid rent to live here, yet I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. My brother, Weston, paid nothing. At 22, he was currently sprawled on the couch in his boxers, scrolling through his phone while I worked the wrinkles out of my collar. The iron hissed, a sharp counterpoint to the mindless tapping of his thumbs against the screen. He had a 2-year business degree currently in its 4th year, funded entirely by the family money I wasn't allowed to touch. I checked my watch. My interview at Garrett Mechanical was in 2 hours. I needed this job. Weston didn't even look up when he finally spoke. "I need a ride to Kennedy's. Her parents are out of town." He said it like he was ordering a pizza. I unplugged the iron, fighting the urge to scream. "Can't," I said, keeping my voice level. "Interview at 11. Take an Uber." He looked at me, confusion wrinkling his forehead. The concept of me saying no was foreign. "Uber costs money, Robin. Just drive me. It's 20 minutes. You have plenty of time." My mother appeared from the hallway before I could grab my keys. She wore that disappointed expression reserved exclusively for me. "Robin, just help your brother. You know how tight money is for him." It wasn't tight, I had seen his new gaming setup. "I have a career opportunity, Mom. Real pay." She waved a hand dismissively. "Weston has connections to maintain. That is his future. Family supports family. Why do you always have to be so difficult?" The front door opened, and my father walked in early. He saw the tension and zeroed in on me. "What is the problem?" When Weston whined about his ride, my father didn't hesitate. He crossed the kitchen in 2 heavy strides. He grabbed my freshly ironed shirt and shoved me back. My shoulders hit the plaster with a sickening thud. He leaned in close, smelling of sawdust and stale aggression. "You drive him," he snarled. "His needs come first. You have nowhere important to be." I stared at him, seeing the hate in his eyes. "I am going to my interview." His grip tightened on my collar. "Like that certification you missed 2 years ago. The one you missed because your truck wouldn't start." He smiled, a cruel, satisfied twist of lips. "Fuel pumps are easy to unplug, son." The world stopped. He had sabotaged me. I shoved him off, grabbed my folder, and walked out the door, leaving their shouting behind me forever. I drove 3 miles before my hands stopped shaking enough to grip the wheel properly. I pulled into a dusty Chevron station, the kind with flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped flies. In the bathroom mirror, the damage was undeniable. A purple bloom was already spreading across my cheekbone where the wall had met my face. I splashed cold water on it, but water doesn't wash away a father's grip. I had 40 minutes until the interview. I could hide, or I could own it. Garrett Mechanical was a corrugated metal fortress on the east side of Midland, built to survive dust storms and heat waves. I walked in with my shirt tucked in and my head held high, despite the throbbing in my jaw. The receptionist paused mid-typing when she saw me. She didn't say anything, but her gaze lingered on the mark. "Mr. Thornton is ready for you," she said softly. I nodded, swallowing the metallic taste of fear. This was the only chance I had left. Ray Thornton was a barrel of a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and grease. He didn't sit behind his desk. He stood by the window, reviewing a schematic. He turned, extended a hand that felt like a vice grip, and looked me dead in the eye. He didn't ask about my resume first. He pointed a thick finger at my face. "Rough morning?" he asked, his voice gravelly and low. There was no judgment, just observation. I had a lie ready. I could have said I walked into a door or tripped over a toolbox. But I was tired of lying for people who wouldn't bleed for me. "My father," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He tried to stop me physically from coming here. I came anyway." Ray's eyebrows shot up, but he didn't interrupt. I held his gaze, refusing to look away or apologize for my reality. The silence in the small office stretched thin and tight. Ray finally nodded, a slow movement that signaled a shift in the room's gravity. "How far did you drive after that?" he asked. 10 miles, I answered. He let out a short huff that might have been a laugh. "Well, you showed up. Half the kids I interview call in sick if it rains." He sat down and pointed to the chair. "Let's talk HVAC. If you can handle a punch, maybe you can handle a Texas attic in July." We talked for 20 minutes about motors, circuits, and work ethic. I told him I wasn't afraid of the grind, that I needed to build something real. By the end, he was filling out a hire slip. "You start Monday," Ray said, pushing the paper across the desk. "Standard apprentice rate to start, raise after certification." I stared at the paper. It was a lifeline. But then the reality hit me. I had the job, but I had nowhere to sleep tonight. Ray watched me hesitate, his eyes narrowing slightly as he processed the situation. "You got a place to crash?" he asked bluntly. I started to shake my head, then stopped. "I'll figure it out." Ray picked up his phone and dialed a number. "I got a buddy, Chuck. Runs an auto shop on 7th. He's got a room above the garage. It's ugly, but it's safe." He didn't just offer me a paycheck, he offered me an exit strategy. Chuck's auto was a shrine to grace and silence. I pulled my truck around back as the sun dipped low, painting the oil-stained concrete in deep oranges. Chuck met me at the bay door, wiping his hands on a rag that was more dirt than fabric. He didn't ask questions. He just tossed me a key on a heavy brass ring. "Up those stairs. Don't smoke inside. Water pressure is temperamental." It was a command, not a tour. I climbed the metal steps, boots ringing on the grate. The room was a concrete box that smelled of stale rubber and old dust. A military, surplus cot sat in the corner next to a space heater that looked like a fire hazard from the 70s. I sat on the thin mattress, listening to the distant hum of traffic on Highway 20. It was cold, ugly, and empty. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. For the first time in 26 years, the silence belonged to me. The next week was a blur of fiberglass insulation and searing heat. I crawled through attics that felt like ovens, dragging flex duct while sweat stung my eyes. My journeyman, Hector, didn't talk much. He just pointed at mistakes with a flashlight and waited for me to fix them. My muscles screamed every night, a dull ache that made it easy to sleep. The physical exhaustion was a mercy. It kept my mind from drifting back to the kitchen wall. My phone became a grenade I was afraid to touch. My mother's messages piled up in the notifications, a digital archive of guilt. "We're worried sick. Your father didn't mean it. Weston needs help with his tuition." I didn't open a single one, but the buzzing in my pocket felt like a leash tugging me backward. I needed my birth certificate and social security card to finalize the HR paperwork. I couldn't ignore them forever. I had to go back. I didn't go alone. Dale, my old supervisor from the warehouse, picked me up in his truck at 7 on a Tuesday. He was 6'4" and silent, the kind of witness who changes the atmosphere just by standing there. When we pulled into the driveway, my mother was already on the porch. Her face shifted from angry to tragic the moment she saw Dale. She wanted a private victim, not a public audience. I walked past her without a word. My bedroom felt smaller, like a skin I had shed. I packed my clothes into trash bags, moving with efficient, jerky motions. Weston leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over a shirt that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "Running away," he sneered, checking his nails. "Good luck out there. You'll be back when you run out of gas money." I didn't look at him. I just zipped my duffel bag, the sound loud and final in the quiet house. I went to the hallway desk for the family lockbox. I knew the code. I had organized their files for years. The lid popped open. I searched for the envelope marked Robin. It was gone. I checked again, panic rising. My mother stepped into the hallway, her eyes cold and triumphant. "You can't leave if you don't exist," she whispered. We're keeping those safe. They thought holding my papers would bring me back, but they only guaranteed I'd dig deeper. Friday brought my first check from Garrett Mechanical, a crisp rectangle of paper worth $846. I sat in the van outside the credit union, staring at the perforated edges of the stub. For the first time, this money wasn't earmarked for my parents' rent or Weston's unexpected expenses. It was mine, earned in sweat and fiberglass insulation. The sum wasn't a fortune, but it was freedom printed in black ink. I walked into the bank with my boots still dusty from the shop floor, feeling like a man who had finally cut the anchor chain. The banker was a young woman named Sarah, who smiled warmly until she typed my social security number into her system. Her fingers stopped moving mid-stroke. The click of the keys died, replaced by the low hum of the air conditioning. She frowned, tilted her screen away, and lowered her voice to a whisper. I can't open an account for you, sir. The system has flagged your profile. I felt the blood drain from my face. Flagged for what? She slid a brochure across the desk without meeting my eyes. You have significant negative history. You need to pull your credit report immediately. I walked out of the bank feeling like a criminal, my uncashed check burning a hole in my pocket. I had never owned a credit card. I bought my tools with cash and drove a truck held together by rust and prayers. How could I have negative history? I drove back to the shop, my mind racing. Chuck was out on a tow, so I sat at his ancient desktop computer in the office. The screen flickered as I navigated to the credit bureau's website, my hands trembling, just like they had in the gas station bathroom before the interview. The verification process asked questions that felt like a trap. Which of the following car loans belongs to you? I clicked. None. Which address is associated with your Discover card? I clicked. None. The system spun for an agonizing moment, then loaded a PDF that was 40 pages long. I scrolled to the summary page and stopped breathing. Total outstanding debt $32,000. The number stared back at me, sharp and impossible. That was more than I made in a year. That was the difference between survival and drowning. That was my future, stolen before I even started. I forced myself to look at the itemized list, tracing the theft line by line. The dates went back to when I was 19. There were 3 credit cards maxed out to the limit and a personal line of credit. I saw charges for Alienware, electronics, boutique clothing stores in Dallas, and recurring payments for a premium cable package I wasn't allowed to watch. There were gas station charges every 3 days for premium fuel. My truck took diesel. My brother's truck took premium. The pattern wasn't random. It was a lifestyle I had been subsidizing while sleeping in a storage room. The smoking gun was buried on page 12. A transaction for a high-end gaming headset purchased 4 months ago. I expanded the details. Billing address my name. Shipping address Weston, Suco Kennedy's family ranch. He knew. He hadn't just accepted the money, he had actively spent it knowing it was fraud. I printed the page, the dot matrix printer screeching like a dying bird in the quiet shop. It wasn't just favoritism anymore, it was grand larceny. I picked up the phone to call legal aid. I wasn't their son. I was their stolen credit limit. The legal aid clinic was wedged between a bail bondsman and a donut shop. I waited 40 minutes before a woman named Lucy called my name. She was older, with glasses on a chain and eyes that had seen every version of a sob story Midland had to offer. I laid the credit report and the shipping receipt on her desk. She flipped through the pages in silence, her highlighter marking the damning totals in neon yellow. It felt like an autopsy of my life. This isn't an error, Robin, she said, capping the pen with a sharp click. This is systematic identity theft. 32 grand doesn't happen by accident. She looked at me over her rims. Family cases are the hardest. Victims usually back down because they don't want to hurt the people who hurt them. Her voice was professional, but kind, a soft layer over a hard truth. She needed to know if I had the stomach for what came next. If we proceed, there is no going back. I asked what proceeding looked like. Lucy leaned forward, interlacing her fingers. You file a police report. We submit that to the credit bureaus. They investigate. She paused, making sure I was listening. When the police trace this back to the IP addresses and bank accounts, your parents will be charged. This is felony fraud. Your father could go to prison. Your mother too. The word prison hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I looked at the degree on her wall, trying to remember how to breathe. For a second, I wavered. I thought about Sunday dinners and how my mother used to cut my hair. Then I thought about the education fund. The phantom account they claimed existed whenever Weston needed tuition, while I scraped rust off warehouse floors. They had looked me in the eye and pleaded poverty while wearing clothes bought with my future. They hadn't just stolen money, they had stolen the years I spent believing I was a burden. The guilt evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. They made their choice, I said, my voice sounding older than I felt. They had 7 years to stop. They only stopped because I caught them. Lucy nodded, opened a drawer, and pulled out a fresh affidavit. I need you to sign here and initial the bottom. The pen felt heavy in my hand, like a weapon. I wrote my name in black ink. With that signature, I wasn't their son anymore. I was the plaintiff. I handed the paper back. Lucy filed the paper into a folder marked Priority. There is something else, she said, looking at a second screen. When we pull credit reports for fraud, we sometimes see cross references to business accounts if the social security number was used as a guarantor. She tapped a key. Your father's landscaping business has several inquiries linked to your file. My stomach dropped. He used my name for the business, I asked. It looks like he used it to hide assets, she replied. If he's cooking the books on his personal credit, Lucy said, he's likely doing it with his commercial accounts too. She explained the investigation would audit everything attached to his name. Client deposits, tax filings, payroll. By signing that affidavit, I hadn't just cut off a credit card. I had lit a fuse under his entire financial existence. I walked out into the blinding Texas sun. I signed the paper, and with one pen stroke, I ceased to be their son and became their victim. The investigation started quietly, but the end arrived with sirens. 2 detectives showed up at my father's landscaping site on a Wednesday morning. They blocked the main entrance with their cruiser, lights flashing against the manicured hedges. I heard about it from Dale, whose cousin was on the crew. My father tried to play it cool, acting like it was a misunderstanding, but you can't talk your way out of handcuffs in front of a client. The illusion of respectability evaporated instantly in the humid Texas heat. Word travels faster than dust in Midland. By Friday, 3 major contracts had been canceled. No one wants a landscaper who is under investigation for felony fraud. The phone lines at his office, usually ringing with new business, went silent or rang with angry vendors demanding payment. He had been robbing Peter to pay Paul for years, using new deposits to cover old debts. Now that the new money stopped flowing, the dam broke. The liquidity crisis exposed the rot underneath the surface. Lucy called me into her office to review the forensic accounting. The numbers were staggering. My $32,000 was just the tip of a very ugly iceberg. Investigators found $80,000 in stolen client deposits, money taken for patios and pools that were never built. There was another $40,000 in unpaid payroll taxes. He had been withholding taxes from his workers' checks, but never sending the money to the IRS. He wasn't just stealing from his son, he was stealing from everyone he touched. The most painful revelation was about my mother. I had held on to a tiny hope that she was just a passive victim of his schemes. The bank records destroyed that fantasy. Her signature was on the fraudulent loan applications. Her email address was linked to the credit card alerts. She had been balancing the books of their criminal enterprise every month, moving money from my stolen identity to cover Weston's car payments. She wasn't a hostage to my father's greed. She was the architect of the logistics. Weston didn't take the news well. He showed up at Chuck's shop a week later, driving the truck that my credit score had paid to maintain. He didn't look like the golden child anymore. His shirt was wrinkled, and he had the frantic energy of a trapped animal. I was in the bay changing a compressor when he stormed in, ignoring the employees only sign. He looked at me with pure hatred, as if I were the villain for refusing to be robbed any longer. "You need to drop this," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Dad is going to lose everything. The house, the business, everything." I wiped grease from my hands with a rag, taking my time. "I didn't take those things, Weston." "He did." He stepped closer, invading my space. "We are family!" "You don't call the cops on family." I looked him up and down. Family doesn't open credit cards in your name to buy gaming headsets. You enjoyed the loot. Now you can enjoy the bill. Weston lunged, a clumsy swing aimed at my chest. Before I could react, a shadow moved from the office door. Chuck stepped between us, holding a tire iron like it was an extension of his arm. He didn't raise it, he just let the weight of the steel do the talking. "You are going to want to get back in that pretty truck," Chuck said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "We don't tolerate trash here." The air in the garage went freezing cold. Weston looked from the tire iron to me, waiting for me to save him. I turned my back and picked up a wrench. That small motion hurt him more than a punch. It was a dismissal. He wasn't worth the fight. He retreated, peeling out of the parking lot in a cloud of smoke that smelled of burning rubber and desperation. It was the last time I saw him act tough. Without our parents' money shielding him, he was just a scared kid in a stolen truck. My father tried one last desperate gambit to stay out of prison. He told the investigators that I had verbally authorized every single expense. He claimed the credit cards were a family arrangement to help build my credit score. It was a lie so bold it almost worked, relying on the she said nature of domestic disputes. But he forgot about the digital trail. He forgot that lies don't leave receipts, but Amazon deliveries do. The investigator called me to verify one specific detail regarding a shipping label. The final nail in the coffin was a simple shipping confirmation. The gaming headset ordered with my card had been sent directly to Weston, care of Kennedy's Ranch. The account was registered to my mother's email, but the IP address matched my father's office. They had triangulated their own guilt. The prosecutor didn't just have a case. She had a map of the crime scene. They built a kingdom on quicksand, and I just happened to be the one who finally bumped the table. It took 8 months for the wheels of justice to grind my family into dust. The courtroom in downtown Midland smelled of floor wax and old anguish. I sat in the back row, wearing a suit I bought with my own money, flanked by Lucy and Dale. My parents sat at the defense table, their backs stiff and alien. They looked smaller without their expensive clothes and the armor of their lies. The air conditioner hummed a low, monotonous drone that did nothing to cool the stifling tension. Today wasn't about truth anymore. The plea deals were signed. Today was just about the bill coming due. My mother took the stand first for the sentencing mitigation. She wore a modest gray cardigan I had never seen before, a costume of humility purchased for this exact performance. She wept into a tissue, her shoulders shaking with practiced rhythm. "We only wanted to help our boys," she sobbed, looking everywhere but at me. "The economy was so hard. We got behind. We intended to pay it all back." It was a masterclass in deflection. She painted a picture of a struggling family, erasing the luxury truck and the gaming setup with her tears. My father didn't cry. He sat with his jaw locked tight enough to crack a molar, staring at the judge with a mix of boredom and disdain. He still believed he was the smartest man in the room, temporarily inconvenienced by a system he couldn't bully. His lawyer droned on about his standing in the community and his years of business ownership. It was nauseating. They were talking about a man who didn't exist, a fiction created to hide the thief who sabotaged his own son's truck. He tapped a pen on the table, an impatient rhythm against the wood. Weston sat 3 rows behind them, slumped low in the pew like he was trying to melt into the wood. He checked his phone constantly, the glow illuminating a face that had lost its smugness. He wasn't on trial today, but his lifestyle was. Kennedy wasn't with him. Apparently, her family didn't date into criminal indictments. He looked up once, caught my eye, and quickly looked away. There was no anger left in him, just a hollow fear. He was realizing that the bank of mom and dad was permanently closed. The free ride had hit a brick wall. The bailiff called my name for the victim impact statement. The walk to the podium felt longer than the 10 miles I had walked after the fight. I felt my father's gaze burning into the side of my head, a physical weight trying to push me down. I placed my hands on the wood, feeling the grain under my calloused fingertips. I had written a speech, but looking at them, the paper felt useless. I folded it and put it away. I didn't need notes to describe the scar on my cheek or the hole in my credit score. They told me we were broke, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the high, ceilinged room. For 7 years, I paid rent to sleep in a room they owned, believing we were struggling. Meanwhile, they opened 3 credit cards in my name to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford. I looked at the judge, a stern woman with glasses on a chain. It wasn't just money. They stole my ability to start a life. They let me believe I was a failure because I couldn't get ahead, knowing they were the ones standing on my neck. I took a breath and turned to face my father directly. He didn't blink. The money is fixable, I told him. But 2 years ago, I missed a certification exam because my fuel pump was disconnected. You watched me cry on the side of the road. You watched me lose that opportunity so I would stay dependent. A murmur went through the gallery. That was the detail that turned the room. Financial fraud is cold numbers, but sabotaging your child's vehicle is a cruelty everyone understands. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. The judge didn't waste time with a long lecture. She shuffled her papers, her face set in stone. The betrayal of trust here is absolute, she stated flatly. You preyed on your own child to maintain a facade. She looked at my father. 4 years in state prison. Immediate remand. Then she turned to my mother. 5 years probation and full restitution. The gavel banged, a sharp, wooden gunshot that ended the era of my father's control. Bailiffs moved in instantly, jangling handcuffs that glinted under the harsh lights. The reality of the cage finally hit him. The restitution order was the final blow. To pay back the $80,000 in client deposits and the $32,000 owed to me, the court ordered the liquidation of assets. That meant the house. The ranch-style home where I had ironed my shirt and learned to be invisible was gone. It would be sold to strangers to pay for the sins committed inside it. My mother let out a wail that wasn't acting anymore. It was the sound of a woman watching her entire world get repossessed. She reached for my father, but he was already cuffed. As the officers led him past the railing, my father stopped. He leaned over the barrier, his face red and twisted. Are you happy now? He hissed, spit flying. You destroyed this family. I stopped and looked him in the eye, feeling absolutely nothing. No fear, no guilt, no anger. Just clarity. I didn't destroy anything, I said quietly, loud enough only for him to hear. You did. I just turned on the lights. I turned my back on him and walked out of the courtroom, stepping into the bright, blinding sunshine of a free afternoon. 3 years later, the view from my windshield was different. I sat behind the wheel of a company van with "Fru lid" stitched onto my uniform. The air conditioner hummed, a luxury I used to dream about while sweating in my parents' uninsulated garage. My credit score sat at a healthy 720, rebuilt brick by brick. I rented a clean apartment on the north side with furniture I actually owned. It was quiet, solvent, and mine. Nobody could take the keys away this time. I pulled up to a commercial install at the new medical center. A kid named Leo waited by the dock, looking nervous. He reminded me of myself at 26. hungry but terrified of making a mistake. Put the phone away, I told him, tossing him a pair of gloves. We work until the job is done. He nodded, scrambling to keep up. I wasn't just turning wrenches anymore, I was teaching the trade. Ray had retired last month, leaving the field operations in my hands. I drove past the old house on my way to lunch. A generic, sold, sign sat in the yard, replacing the foreclosure notice. Strangers were painting the front door a cheerful yellow, erasing the gray misery I grew up in. My mother had sent a letter last week, forwarded from Chuck's shop. The envelope was thick, full of excuses and requests for money. I didn't open it. I kept it in the glove box for a day, then threw it in a dumpster behind the gas station. Speaking of gas stations, I saw Weston there. He was wiping down pumps at the Circle K on the edge of town. He wore a uniform that was 2 sizes too big and looked 10 years older than 25. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the dull look of survival. He saw my van at the red light. Our eyes locked for a second. He didn't wave, and I didn't honk. He went back to scrubbing bird droppings off the nozzle. The golden child had rusted. I used to believe that family was a debt I had to pay forever. I thought their happiness was the price of my admission to the world. That was the lie that kept me in the smallest bedroom paying their bills. The truth was simple. Family is an action, not a blood type. Ray was family. Chuck was family. The people who showed up when I was bleeding were family. My parents were people who happened to share my DNA and steal my identity. I parked the van at the shop and locked the doors. The sun was setting, painting the Texas sky in beautiful reds. I checked my phone. No notifications from my mother, no demands from my brother. Just a text from Dale asking if I wanted tacos. I typed, "On my way," and pocketed the device. I had walked out of that kitchen 3 years ago with nothing but a bruised face. Walking away wasn't quitting. It was the only way to finally start living.